Hey, we're going to talk about acids and bases just a little bit, get you prepared for tomorrow.
Well, what are acids and what are bases? Well, an acid is anything that breaks down into hydrogen ions, and those hydrogen ions then are free to react with anything else. What's a hydrogen ion? Well, it's a hydrogen that loses an Elliott electron. So if you lose an Elliott electron, what does a hydrogen have? Just one proton. So a hydrogen ion is nothing more than a free proton that wants to react with something. Here's an example. Hydrochloric acid. Put hydrochloric acid in some water and it will dissociate into or break down into these hydrogen ions and a chlorine ion. But that hydrogen ion is highly reactive and that proton wants to react with something. Well, what's a base? A base is anything that will accept those protons or those hydrogen ions. Take an example of sodium hydroxide. Put it in water and it's going to dissociate into that sodium, but also this hydroxide ion, an OH with a negative, is hydroxide ion. And it has a negative charge, so it's looking for those positive ions, and it's going to want to interact with something that has a positive charge, so its outer shell is full. Here's the pH scale. Well, how do we measure how strong an acid is or how strong a base is? Well, it's a scale, and it's a scale of called potential hydrogen, how much free hydrogens there are. Anything that doesn't have very much is called, or is neutral, has a scale of 7. It's a 7. As you move down the scale to 0, your concentration of those hydrogen ions are increased. So you have a lot of hydrogen protons, you're an acid. Going up the scale, if you don't have very many hydrogen protons, then you are a base. And that's a strong base, and it gets down to neutral, and then you get down to an acid. Well, how can we test whether something is an acid or a base? We use these things called litmus paper. And I know I'm shaking here because use these things called litmus paper. We have red litmus paper and blue litmus paper. Well, what does that do? Well, for red litmus paper, if you put it in a solution and it's just a paper and that red litmus paper turns blue, it means you have a base. Red litmus paper, put it in a solution and it turns blue, it means the solution is a base, which is low in those hydrogen ions, and it has some of those base. Then we have blue litmus paper. If you take blue litmus paper and you put it into a solution and it turns red, that means you have an acid. Blue litmus paper, red, that means it's an acid. Well, how are you going to remember this? This is how I remember it. And I only remember one thing. If it turns blue, it's a base. Well, what has to turn blue? The red has to turn blue. Well, what if the blue stays blue? Does that mean it's a base? No, because it can also be neutral. Let's do an example. Let's go ahead and test this red litmus paper and blue litmus paper and see what we have. I did this yesterday and tried to load it on YouTube, and it didn't work. The program crashed, and I have to retape this morning. So when I did this, I don't know which solution is the acid solution and which one is the base, but we'll find out. So I have this red litmus paper, and this is what the red litmus paper looks like. It's kind of more like a pinkish color. And if I put it in here, and you can see that red litmus paper just turned blue, what does that mean? Red litmus paper turns blue, that means it's that's correct, it's a base. So I have this paper here with this blue litmus paper, this solution. I'm going to take this blue paper and stick it in, and you can see that the blue turned red. So if the blue turns red, what does that mean? Exactly. Blue turning red means it's an acid.